So first, I think it's most important to start with the Gallery 3 panel here. And one quick tip that I think you'll want to know is, right now I have it off, but I'll turn on maximum. And in these settings, there is an extra bright option. So when you're drawing, if you want things to look a little more vivid, I would recommend turning that on. And then you can easily just fine control the brightness here in the quick setting. But one really important thing about the Paper Pro Move is that the PPI was increased from the 229 range to the 260 plus range. And on a device that's this small, that is relatively important because you tend to look at the device a lot closer than you would on something like the big Paper Pro. And so having that nice fine resolution detail, you can see here, every little minute detail, even in the thumbnails, is very clear here. And that's because of that increased PPI. The Paper Pro Move series with the Gallery 3 tech does have more vibrant yellows, and certain other colors pop a little bit more when comparing it to the alternative, which would be Kaleido 3 panels. So like the pocketbook I'm showing here, or the Books Note Air 5C that I'm going to be reviewing soon. They just end up looking different. I don't personally think one is better than the other. For the Paper Pro, for having, highlighting and all that stuff, it makes more sense to use Gallery, I think. But then you will have some compromises with the flashing, where Kaleido does a quicker flash and it's a little less distracting. If you have the Paper Pro Move and sketching is always something you kind of wanted to try, then here are some tips for you. So if you have a PDF, creates a background layer. And so when you go to layers, you can see the background is there, but then you can add layers, and automatically if you use the pen, it'll be on the top layer, which is a new layer. And so you'll see if I hide the background, for example, you're able to trace things right there. And it's a good exercise if you just want that in your notes, or if you want to draw your thumbnails, for example, but you're not really so inclined to draw on your own. Another thing you can do is you can get a sheet of paper with a drawing already on it, and you can trace over that as well. So that can be useful to get a rough outline of your drawing, or if you just want to be coloring in it for fun. Here's a drawing I'm working on currently. It's a Resto Mod 911, kind of an old version that is renewed. One thing here that's really useful is when you're in landscape, normally your toolbar might be there, and so having it move down here gives me a lot more vertical space in the landscape orientation. And vice versa, if you're drawing vertically, then moving it to the top can give you some more room in that direction. But it is nice when you do have a lot of layers. If you have two that you really like and you're finalized on those, you can merge them to add room for more layers, because I believe there's a maximum of 5 layers. And you can also rename the labels on the layers, which is pretty helpful for when you're in that creative flow, so that you can just easily switch back and forth and not have to remember which one was which. The gallery panel is darker in general, so to get that vibrancy, you will want to be using the front light in most scenarios. But that is what makes it a great little travel companion, is that you can draw anywhere regardless of the lighting. And with that extra bright setting, it does really help. And the fact that this is now a little bit more pocketable. It doesn't fit in all my pockets, but it'll fit in any bag, and sometimes jacket pockets, or if you have some looser pants, then it can fit in those pockets as well. And then I talked about this in my tips and tricks video, but when you lasso it, you can invert or mirror things. And that's really helpful when you're doing POVs, perspectives, forced perspective, and all those things that require some symmetry or have really big leading lines. And that brings us into shapes. So shapes have been very helpful in my creative process here. So on the Monopoly Man here, for example, you can see here I mirrored just to reference and show what that's like. But you can see like the clock, for example, I used 2 concentric circles there. And even his little shadow here, I just made a nice long oval for it. Now the shader tool is something that I feel like every time I think I've learned how it works, I kind of have to relearn or like modify some things and play around with it. Because if you don't fill in a full part of an image and then you go again with the shader tool, it does create kind of harsh gradations between there. So sometimes you can use that to your advantage, like in the wheels where I wanted harsher lines of the shadows and the reflections of the metal there. But I remember when I did this drawing, I had to really blend some different colors. So for the yellow here to get a little more orange in there, I think I had to use a little bit of red even. I'd say the shader tool, there's no good like guide on how to use it. It's really more of an experimentation process and learning how you can use it in your own artistic style. But yeah, the shapes were really useful for things like the wheels on the Porsche as well, and the headlights as well being ovals, for example. So getting into the marker, it does come with extra tips, but I haven't replaced this tip in 3 months actually. And sometimes when I'm sketching, I will just quickly sharpen it a little like this before, but I also make sure to rotate the tip every couple days, and that evens it out a little bit so it can extend the lifespan. But if you're in a pinch and you're out drawing somewhere, you don't have extra tips with you, you can do that really quickly on the side of the device like this, and it will sharpen a little bit. And these marker tips you have to buy directly from reMarkable. I am actually going to change it now because it's been 3 months, and I do want to finish this Porsche drawing that I'm working on with a fresh tip and just feel the difference, because the past week I've been working on it with this older tip. But you do have to buy these from reMarkable. I do feel in general that it lacks a little bit of fine point control. There are times when I'm drawing and I feel like I have to go back to redo a line that I normally would have been able to do smoothly. And I can't sometimes tell if that's because of the slippery glass surface. It does have that scratchy sound. You hear that? But it is relatively like slick in a sense. It doesn't offer a lot of resistance. And so having fine point control is sometimes tougher. And there's also something called like USI wobble or active style wobble. Because of the way these work, unlike the Wacom alternatives, if you just draw a straight line, you'll see I'll do it now, it'll introduce a little bit of wobble. And so when you're doing like longer curves and stuff like that, that can be a little bit of an impact that the wobble can have. And so I don't feel like the fine point control is very good on this. It's passable and it's still fun, but it's not the best. Whereas something like the Nomad, these ceramic tips are very fine points and you never need to replace them. But with Feel-Rite 2, I feel like there is a lot more grain texture. And so drawing straight lines on that feels a lot more natural. So I think I could be a lot more precise on this, but at the same time, this does not have color. So I personally think of this as more of a tool for drawing, whereas this I just think is something fun to draw on. And then in terms of the marker, there's the Marker Plus here that has an eraser. I do find that's really nice. I like being able to flip and not having to go into the menu system and click a button for erase and then go erase. You can also erase with a finer point if you select the eraser tool. There's options there to like stroke erase, or you can do different levels of thickness. But if you are drawing, I would highly recommend the Marker Plus over the regular marker. And if you noticed, I have this fuse grip on here. When I do really extended drawing sessions, I like something a little bit bigger that I can have better grip, because these styli are pretty thin in general. It makes it something a little bigger, like a pen like this, where this I use on the Supernote. So I'll link that below if you're interested. My hand just gets less fatigued with this grip on it. And then another thing is when I do sometimes extended sessions on this, the battery life isn't the best. And so I've actually been caught in a pinch where, I was out drawing and it was dying. And so this is one of my favorite accessories. It's a little bracelet you can wear that's USB-C to C. And then it gives me the ability to just plug in here, charge from my phone, and with the quick charge, I find that it's pretty good and I won't be stranded mid-drawing with no battery. Because this is called a move and you're supposed to travel and move around with it, right? Then one of my qualms is that the pinch and zoom isn't the best. So there are some times where when I'm in the regular pinch and zoom, you see there, didn't pinch, there it pinched, okay? So in general, I think if you go a little bit lighter than you're used to, it should work better. But that being said, I probably have like a 75% success rate with it. And also when you do have a lot of layers, I do see it bogged down a little bit. So just know if you're doing very complex drawings on here, it could struggle a little bit and just be a little slower. Then lastly, you can set first pages of your thumbnails to a drawing or a page in that book you have. So that's a really nice way to make it visually more appealing and make it easier to find stuff in here. I do really wish they'd add a soft erase feature like the Supernote Nomad has. That's something I sometimes find myself wanting in here. I have compared these two if you want to check that out, by the way. Last time I did a drawing review on the Big Paper Pro, I was trying the pencil in white and then trying to do some like negative pencil erase kind of stuff. I didn't find that worked the best. I've actually found the paintbrush in white to work a little bit better for that. So you'll see in some of the tire shots I'm doing here, I'm doing a little bit of like deletion, and I think it blends decently well, but I'd still like to see a soft eraser, kind of like a kneadable eraser. I did give this device to my friend Kevin, who's an illustrator, and he tried it out, so you can check that out here. Or if you just got this device and want some more tips and tricks, you can check that out right here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.